Hey, how's it going, everybody? Tim here, back with another video, and I wanted to do another video today about sobriety. I don't think I talk about this topic enough, so I'm trying to do in 2020, in the new year, I'm trying to do more videos about sobriety, and today I wanted to talk about another one of the mental roadblocks that a lot of us have or had when it comes to stopping drinking, and that is the whole coping mechanism. The whole coping mechanism idea, if you will. Okay, so I personally do not feel that that alcohol helps you cope with life. Okay, I feel that alcohol is good for letting you forget about life for a while, and I feel like if you aren't really a heavy drinker, if once or twice a year, a few times a year, you broke out a bottle of something strong and you drank it because you just had a really bad day, cool. Whatever. I know a lot of people like this. They don't struggle with drinking, they don't drink much, but every now and then they like to have a drink, kind of relax, maybe forget about a really bad day or something like that. Don't think there's a problem with that. The problem comes in with those of us who have a drinking problem, and we start, instead of every now and then drinking to help us forget, or to just take our mind off something, it becomes a habit like every single day. Or, any time there's something that goes on in our life, 2-3 times a week, we're drinking. When you start drinking on a regular basis to help you forget about your problems, that is a problem. Because it doesn't solve the problems, it doesn't help you cope. All it really does is make you forget about it for a little bit. And in a lot of cases, once the drinking wears off and you remember the problem again, you have to deal with it. A lot of times, some of the actions we used to take, when we drink, have made the problem worse, or the time that has passed hasn't made the problem any better, it might have made it worse. So this whole idea that, and when you're trying to get sober, I know I was right there. The ideal of not having that coping mechanism used to really scare me. Because that was how I dealt with life. Even though I really wasn't dealing with life, even though I was just pushing my problems a few hours into the future, and a lot of times making them worse, and a lot of times making even more problems while I was drinking, in my mind, I thought that the only way I could cope with life was to drink. I thought the drinking was actually helping me. And a lot of this is programming. We are taught from a very young age that what you need to do if you have a rough day, if you're going through something, you need to have a drink. You hear, when you start looking for it, once I started getting sober, and I started looking at the different programming and lies we're told in movies, television, media, it's crazy. But you hear people say little things like this, and you've heard them your whole life. From womb to tomb, you're surrounded by this basically advertising. I mean, there is the real advertising, and then there's this subliminal kind of advertising they give you that says that drinking helps you cope with life. This is not true. You know what helps you cope with life? Dealing with your problems. That's facing your problems and dealing with them is what helps you cope with life. But you can get to a place, and I know I've been there, you can't imagine facing life and facing your problems sober. You just can't imagine it. You can't. Because you're so used to having kind of this crutch that really isn't a crutch, but you're so used to having the crutch of alcohol that when you wanted to forget, you could. When you wanted to not worry about it, you could. Even though in the end, the problems always come back, and they usually come back worse. You had something. And I will admit, there are days that even now, someone who really, I rarely think about drinking. Every now and then it'll pop in my head, but there are some days when I'm like, dang, I just had a bad day at work or some other stuff, and I'm like, man, it would be nice to have something. I'm also a person that I don't really smoke weed, do any other drugs or anything like that, because I'm like, I fought so hard to get sober from alcohol. I don't want my brain, I don't want any other substance in me. I just want to be straight up, sober from everything. So, I will admit there are some days when it's rough because it's like, dang, I don't want to go back to being the drunk I was before, but it would be nice to have a 6-pack tonight and forget about all that craziness that happened, or you break up in a relationship and you're like, man, it'd be nice to have a couple drinks to help me get through this hard phase, but it's a sacrifice we have to make those of us who struggle with drinking, those of us who have a problem, because it would not be that easy. Let's be honest. I would have a drink and something crazy would happen. If you're already in a bad space, whenever you put alcohol on top of it, those of us who have problems with it, something crazy always happens. Something bad always happens. It would not be that easy. Or it would just be, it would start out just a couple drinks and we'd end up back drinking every day again. So it's not worth it. That's why I don't do it. And I've also realized too that, like I said, manning up, womaning up, putting your big boy pants on, facing your problems head on is really the only way to cope with them. Okay? That is how you become an adult. That is how you get through life. And I will admit, it is hard in the beginning. It is hard in the beginning when you first get sober because you're so used to that. On top of maybe the physical withdrawals you might have and all the other issues you have getting sober, you're used to handling problems in that manner. I'm gonna get drunk, I'm not gonna think about it. Later when I have to do something, I will. You're used to handling problems that way. It is hard. It is hard, I'm not gonna lie. That can be one of the hardest things, to just have to soberly deal with stuff. Because you're not used to it. You've just been programmed to think that's the way to do it. But it is possible. And here's the thing, just how over time you learn to believe that, okay, this is the way you handle problems through alcohol. The more times you handle situations without alcohol, then you start to reprogram your brain, okay? Like your brain is still programmable, even though it's had all these years of this alcohol programming. The more you are sober, the more the programming starts to change. And this is what a lot of times we don't understand. This is why I don't like the whole narrative of once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. You'll notice I rarely ever use that term. It's because when we're trying to get sober, there's so much negative connotation of all. They paint the picture of you're always gonna have to struggle. They paint the picture that as you're trying to get sober, you're always gonna have to struggle at that same level. And that seems unbearable, but this is not true. In the beginning, yes, it's very hard. The struggle is very real. It's almost unbearable, but it gets better as your brain starts to get rewired. Your brain's like 100% of the time last year, we coped with things with alcohol. Then you start throwing a little sobriety in there. Your brain's like, oh, we don't always have to drink to cope with our problems. Then as the longer you stay sober, it's about 50-50. Your brain's like, oh, only half the time do we need to, and eventually you can reprogram your brain to where that's not even the place you go to. Eventually you will be sober long enough and you have dealt with enough problems on your own that your brain doesn't even go there on a regular basis. Like I said, every now and then, once every 6 months or so, you might be like, dang, I really like to drink right now. This is bullshit, or whatever. But, and then you just realize, no, I'm not gonna do that. You have enough time built up, you have enough sobriety built up that A, your brain doesn't take it there. And then you also, your conscious brain, you can realize, no, I'm not gonna risk, all the sobriety I have just so like I can have a couple drinks that really aren't gonna change anything. It's not gonna change anything. I'm still gonna have to deal with this stuff later. And it does get easier. That's always my message. You can get sober. You will get sober. If you're the type of person who is sitting here watching videos on YouTube about sobriety, trust me, you've got what it takes. It may take time. There may be some relapses, but you will do it eventually. Or you'll continue. Maybe you're someone who's already sober and just watching this video for like motivation. Kind of why I make these videos, to continue to motivate me to stay sober. You're gonna keep sober, like, you know what I mean? Like it's you get to a place where it gets a lot easier. You get to a place where sobriety becomes the norm for you. People are always asking me, does it bother you if I have alcohol around, blah, 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 blah. For me, it's a no. I know it's different for everybody, but you can get to a place where things that would have triggered you or made you just go and got bender won't, because your brain gets rewired. And you definitely can learn to cope with life without drinking. You can learn to cope with life being sober. You can learn to embrace the problems in life. You can get to a point where it's like, oh, this is happening. All right. This gives me an opportunity to showcase that I can figure, Like it's different. You will not always look at life the way you look at it now. The alcohol is clouding your view of the world. And when you get that out of the way, you start to see the world in a different light, a different manner, and you behave differently. You know, so the message of this video is you can get sober, you can cope, hang in there, keep doing what you're doing. There are so many people out there who are just where you were, you know, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years ago. Now they're living a sober lifestyle. Every day's a win. Every day's a win. Dude, when you've been struggling with alcohol and you kick it and you go sober, it doesn't matter what else happens in your life, how bad you mess up at work or in your relationship. Every day is still a win. Every day is still a W, because you kicked that monkey off your back. Anyway, I'm Tim. Hope this video was helpful. If you have any other ideas on some videos about drinking or sobriety or things like that, please leave them in the description box below, in the comment box below, excuse me. Also, all my social medias is in the description box below. And if you ever need someone to talk to, you're having a bad night, thinking about relapsing, any of that, I know you don't really know me, but I'm dead serious. You can hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. We can talk. I'm always down to help my people, because, you know, it's rough. It's rough. I know. I've been there. Talk to you later.